Good morning. Welcome to this morning's Climate Change and Sustainability Committee. Can I just start by introducing the top table? On my left, I have Fraser Croft, who's the Strategic Lead for Environment and Infrastructure. On my right, I have Adam Taylor from Democratic Services. And part of the virtual top table, we have Councillor Liz Barrett, who is joining us online as the Vice Convener for the committee. I will now ask Adam to confirm any apologies received and take a roll call of members in attendance and online.
Thanks, Convener. Morning, members. We have one apology this morning from Councillor Welsh, who's been substituted by Councillor Harvey. We have 3 members currently online. I will just ask those 3 to confirm that they're actually in the meeting. So, Councillor Barrett?
Present.
Yep. Councillor Kogali?
Present.
And Councillor Harvey?
Present.
All other members are present in the chambers, Convener. So, okay.
And just a welcome this morning to Richard and Martin from the Climate Change Commission. Thanks very much for joining us. Do we have any declaration, or can I just remind councillors and officers to use the chat box, or if you're in the room, put your hand up, just to attract my attention if you have any questions or comments during the meeting. Do we have any declarations of interest for any of the papers before us this morning? Thank you. Can we agree the minute from our last meeting held on the 14th of February this year? Councillor Forbes.
Yeah, thanks. Just a question. The minutes, I think, accurately reflect what we discussed last time, but it also tells us we only had one item of substantive business and one update, and that seems to be the same today. I'm just wondering, is this the way this committee is always going to be, or will there be more business for us to deal with at future meetings?
There will be more at certain meetings, but I don't know if Vivian or Fraser want to update on that.
Thanks, Convener. Yes, obviously looking just to plan ahead. A little bit of a transition period at the moment, within the team. But looking at the forward planners and going to work with the conveners on bringing more papers clearly for decision making only, not for noting.
Thank you. Thank you. Our first paper this morning is, or update, it was this morning, is Grow Wild for Perth and Kinross. Can I ask Leslie Ann Cassidy from Community Green Space to provide a verbal update?
Good morning. Just an update on the grassland management trials. They're going to be extended across Perth and Kinross after the 42 sites were successful. 8 of those were biodiversity areas which were cut and lift, and the rest were no mow. So these areas provide longer grass and create space for nature and help attract bees and butterflies and other insect pollinators, and let the grass and native plants grow and flower. So we are looking at this as a sort of wider project that's going to be called Grow Wild for Perth and Kinross. The extended trial will see areas of grass left uncut in the majority of our sites over the next 3 years, and areas that the trials are taking place will be shown on our website. This is very much a work in progress at the moment. Our web page is going live today. That should be available by close of play, but we're still working on some of the content, such as the areas that are going to be affected, as we're having the squads go out and identify areas based on their local knowledge. And we will be in due course putting up the list of sites and adding to the maps where these areas are. It'll be a flexible approach, so just because we're putting maps up doesn't mean that we won't actually make any changes there. We're happy to work with communities to ensure that we're maximising, amenity use as well as biodiversity as well. So there will be links showing community groups so that people can contact community groups to get involved if they wish to do so. There'll be links on the website to climate change and biodiversity information. There'll be FAQs on the webpage which we can add to. We've put on what we think is important to people, but you know, as people contact us, we can add to them so that people can find information on the webpage easily. We'll be gradually installing signage on all the areas affected, and we'll be doing interpretation signs on some of our larger sites, just to show people the benefits of what we're doing. There will be QR codes that will link people to the websites and the maps, so they'll be able to have a look and find out more information and see how they can get involved as well. We are emailing community groups, some as Bloom Path groups, climate change and biodiversity groups, just to tell them what's happening and what they're likely to see. We'll encourage communities to manage green spaces in different ways. That could be cutting and lifting, or you know, with the machinery that we got through the biodiversity money for the rangers to work with community groups, or to identify potential food growing spaces or areas where we can create nature corridors. We're very much encouraging people to plant native trees and pollinators, and we're growing these at our West Bank nursery, and these will be available over a period of time to plant out there. As part of the trial as well, we're also reducing the amount of chemical usage, and that'll be around trees and obstacles such as litter bins, but also we're going to stop using chemicals on sports markings, and we're going to be using what we call marker carrots, but they're like wee dowels that you put in the areas so that you can line the pitch that way. We're pulling together a survey with a mapping function so that people can comment on what they think about the sites that they're looking at and in their area, and if there's anything else that they would like us to do. So what this will look like is it's going to be rolled out over 3 years. So we're focusing this year on the areas that are managed from Friarton and Perth. There will be a map on the website, but that's sort of ranging from Invergowrie down to Bridge of Erne, Glenfarg, out to Almondbank, Stanley, as well as Perth itself. But the map's quite comprehensive, and that'll be available later. We will still cut areas like sports pitches, play areas and informal play areas. We'll still be cutting service strips, but we'll be looking to do what's called relaxed mowing. So it'll be cut at a higher height and less frequent, so that we can encourage pollinators such as daisies to flower, and that'll then create nature networks as well. The no mow areas will leave the main body of the grass uncut, and desire lines where appropriate to allow people still to use these natural spaces for dog walking. We'll have different techniques. So bulb areas, we will still cut and lift these areas once a year, but we're looking at, you know, some of them will be done if it's high amenity in the sort of June, July period, as they have been done historically. But some of them that we're going to move to more biodiverse areas, we're going to look at a cut and lift at the end of the year. And hopefully, you know, we can try and look at, you know, maybe introducing some summer flowering bulbs there as well, if we can get communities involved. And we will be trialling cut and lift areas with the machinery that we got through the Nature Restoration Fund via our operations team down at Friarton. We'll be looking at keeping existing long grass areas as well, and we'll ensure that path and road edges receive a moor's width cut alongside. Wildflower areas will be cut back once a year. Weeds will be removed in some areas via a hand or chemical method if they're invasive. And we will be allowing leaf fall to be displaced onto biodiversity areas and left to naturally mulch. So that's basically how we're extending it, and hoping to work with communities to take all this forward. Any questions?
Councillor Cuthbertson first and then Angus afterwards.
Yeah, you're probably going to do this anyway, but I was just going to say, could you get the link to the page sent out to councillors so that we can be forewarned, if you like, and check what's happening in our own areas, please?
Absolutely, yes. I'll get that done.
Angus.
Thanks, convener. Thanks for that, Leslie Ann. I'm just interested, I've got a couple of questions, but there's other people want to ask, so I'll come back with my other one. You reference in your briefing document 118 local volunteer groups. Are these groups that are already in existence that we're going to be asking to do more work? or are we looking to increase the number of groups? I'm just really conscious that things like the Bloom groups we're putting more and more work on them because they're keen and they're willing to help, and there'll come a point where we break that relationship if we push them too hard.
It is existing groups. However, there are other groups such as biodiversity groups, climate change groups who are very keen to get involved in these aspects. I mean, we are encouraging the Bloom groups to look at a more sustainable approach to what they're doing. And last year, the £75,000 that we had to encourage biodiversity for our groups worked very well, and they did take up the offer of more sustainable planting in many locations.
Ken, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Leslie, for your presentation. Yeah, just a kind of quick question. Probably want to say this anyway, but I'm assuming over the 3 years you'll be monitoring how the kind of this goes, because some areas, as you know, will come out with a lot of wildflowers. Some areas won't. So I assume you use the rangers and green space to kind of continually monitor where it's working, where it's not. Thanks very much.
No, we won't be using the rangers or green space for that. We've had biodiversity ambassador volunteers doing that the last couple of years, so we're encouraging people to get involved to do that as well, and it will be reported in via the website and collated.
Thank you. Angus, sorry.
Thanks, convener. You said the map, Leslie Ann, is going to be sent or made publicly available. How precise will that be? I mean, for example, would it show me in Errol Park exactly which bit will be cut and which bit will not be cut, or will it not be to that level of detail?
No, at the moment it's just the area. I could share the map with you if that would be helpful. If you just give me 2 minutes, I'll get that. So can you see that now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's just the geographic area at the moment. So we do have the squads going around the areas, having a look at what they think makes sense. They know how people use their open space, you know, where people are walking their dogs, where kids are playing. So they're working their way around that, and the foreman and one of the infrastructure officers is working their way around to produce maps. So we will be adding to them over a period of time. I do have example maps, but they're not going to be 100% at the moment. So what we're going to try and do is capture that information, and as we get those maps, we're going to be uploading them. But again, we're not saying this is absolutely 100% fixed. We're happy to work with communities, and if they want to identify spaces that they think are better than what we've identified, we're happy to change that.
Angus.
Thanks, Leslie Ann. I'm really pleased that you used the phrase work with communities, because I think if I say the word Carsey, everyone in the room will know exactly what I'm referring to. Just maybe for you, convener, and I'm always happy to accept if I've misunderstood something, but I seem to remember in the budget there was something about the administration recognised they want to take people with them and this kind of thing. And does that signify a change of direction, or is this what you were referring to in your budget information?
There's no change in direction in the policy about where we're going. What we're doing is we're slowing it down and working more with communities. It's important that we take communities with us on this. It's very important from a biodiversity nature, and there's also a cost implication as well. So within our budget, we just slowed down the cuts that we're going. So we put money back in just to ensure. It was that's a slower, but make sure we're getting it right as we go on, and it does kind of tick all the biodiversity boxes that we need to take, and the engagement level as well with communities. So
yeah, that's great, and I'm delighted that you've used the phrase "take communities with us" twice, and Leslie Ann's used it as well. That's exactly the message I want to hear, and I think the general population of Perth and Kinross want to hear as well. So thanks for that clarification.
No problem. Hey, Grant.
Thanks. Yep. And that's the phrase that was used at the budget when the administration decided to defer some of the cuts to the budget that other groups took, which would have made a big bang and not been able to take communities with them. So I'm really glad that we did that, and these words were the exact words that were used in the budget speech. And Leslie Ann, sorry, the convener didn't see my question before Angus's, but it was really to say, and it's probably been covered now, but this new approach of deferring and taking the officer's recommendation of the number of savings to be taken over a 2 or 3 year period, will that make it easier for the squads to identify areas along with communities rather than going for what the other some other groups took, just to take them all in 1 year?
Well, yes, it's certainly going to be more manageable for the resources that we've got. You know, we do only have, you know, a certain amount of rangers and environmental initiatives officers to work alongside the communities. You know, we are focusing very hard. We're working really, really closely with Direct Services through Paul Garden and his team down there to try and make sure that we're working cooperatively. We've got the climate change team, you know, working with us as well to make sure that we're all pulling together in the same direction to get this done as quickly and as efficiently as possible, reaching as many community groups as we can. But yes, not doing it all at once is making a massive difference to us. You know, it allows us to focus and to adapt quicker and easier.
Dave.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, just I see the green area on your map. I'm just wondering when will the other areas start, and will you be coming back to committee to do that?
We will be coming back to committee. I might need to defer to my colleague Paul Garden in operations, because they're actually determining what areas that we're doing based on their operational requirements.
Hello everyone. Yeah, because we recognise our workforce know the areas, and often enough they live in the area they work. They understand more acutely than us managers or officers what each area, each plot requires. So we're allowing a bit of a leeway for them to move it forward and identify the most appropriate areas to introduce this. Over the next, we believe, 3 to 4 weeks, we'll have a list of sites and a map of sorts. It won't be to within a couple of meters, but it will be an indicative area that will be left as either a bio area or a naturalised area.
Thank you. Dave, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, I'm a bit confused. Do we have a sort of timeline of roughly when the other areas will start? I mean, we said 2 or 3 weeks to sort of do the maps for the current area. It's the ones that are not covered by the green on your map.
Yeah, I think the green area is the year 1, Leslie, and if not mistaken.
Yeah, but it's that's
yeah.
What we're doing in year 2 and year 3 hasn't been fully determined. I says that's a bit more operational, so I wasn't sure if you had a focus whether we would do south and then north, or whether it would be, you know, rolled out into both areas.
Oh, I understand. Sorry. Year 2 will be all landward areas. So anything out with the green area, that will be year 2. Year 3 will be additional areas within Perth and the landward areas.
Thank you. Thank you. Hugh, you have a question?
It's a question relative to, I think, a document came out last week from the council showing from Greenspace and how much assistance they're giving to the Bloom and associated groups, which was reduced by about 50% from last year. It's down to about 20,000 quid, which is, I don't know, is that money going on to diversity, or is that money lost to the communities?
That money was taken as a saving 2 years ago, but we were managing to supplement it with the one-off £75,000 we had to support community groups for biodiversity. So that was taken 2 years ago.
Thank you. Any further questions? Leslie Ann, thank you very much for and Paul and for the rest of the team for the amount of work that's gone into all this planning. We'll look forward to seeing more detail within the ward areas affected. And I appreciate the work that's gone into it, and thanks for giving us a verbal update this morning.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any comments on this? Dave?
Just wanted to say that I really welcome the slowing down of this and the involvement of communities. I think that's very important. As everyone's been saying, we need to take them with us. And if we do that, I think we'll get a much more successful rollout. Thank you.
Thank you. Grant?
Yeah, thanks. I welcome the approach that the administration taken to slow this down. Nobody can say we don't listen. We saw what happened last year, and it would have probably we would have had more conflict with communities if we'd proceeded in the way that the proposal within the budget before we amended it was taken. So I think we're listening, and we will manage to take people with us. I think climate change cafes, etc., are very interesting help. As you and I know, convener went up to Dunkeld and spoke to some of the people up there who will step up to the plate as well and help us moving forward. So that's a start of taking communities with us, and I welcome the paper. It is no change in direction. It's a direction we all have to take.
Thank you, Grant. No further questions? Thank you. Item 5 on our paper is consultation draft mobility strategy. Can I ask Ben Wilson, Service Manager for Planning, Transport and Housing Strategy, to introduce the report? Ben?
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, committee. The consultative draft mobility strategy and action plan before you for the council area directs the management and development of our transport network over the next 15 years. This strategy, which is also known as a local transport strategy and is Perth and Kinross Council's first local transport strategy, aims to set out the commitment to sustainably facilitate and support the movement of goods and people across the council area. In alignment with national directives such as the Scottish Transport Appraisal Guidance, also known as STAG Guidance, and the Scottish Government's Local Transport Strategy Guidance, this strategy has been prepared to address the diverse needs of the Perth and Kinross communities, whilst also following best practice in transportation and mobility planning. Throughout its development, there's been public consultation, including last year as part of the wider Big Place conversation, and also 2 elected member workshops. That's set out on pages 5 and 6 of the strategy document, which I think are pages 24 and 25 of your combined agenda pack. Additionally, we plan to embark on an 8-week public consultation period later this month following approval of the report today. And we're seeking to ensure that the voices of all stakeholders are heard and considered as we finalise the strategy and action plan for reporting later this year. At the core of the strategy are 11 transport planning objectives, which are being prepared to inform decision making and planning and strategic leadership, and are tailored to the Perth and Kinross area and its opportunities and constraints. And underpinning this is the approach to avoid and shift and improve journeys, which is a sort of summary for commitment to promote sustainable, healthy and affordable transport options across all types of journeys. Within the action plan part of this, you'll find 44 strategic actions which outline the steps necessary to achieve those objectives. These actions, they're not finished products. Some of them are actions for further work, which will be the subject of future projects and further reports to committees. And they mark the beginning of a process, and that's a journey towards a more connected and sustainable future for Perth and Kinross. And crucially, the mobility strategy, it's intended to be a catalyst for coordinated investment and resource allocation, and also to be used as a tool to support our efforts to secure external funding and engage proactively with all stakeholders, businesses, residents, other groups. and it also addresses initial environmental and equality considerations head on. That's all I want to say, convener. In the meeting today are Neil Moran, who is team leader joint of the Transportation and Development team, and Elliot Williamson, who's lead officer for this project. We're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ben. Noah, can we take your first question, please?
Yeah, so my first question is that there's mention throughout the document of the stakeholder consultation exercise that you say is going to take over an 8-week period. And I was wondering what the actual KPIs are in terms of once that's done, judging whether that's been a success or not. I think it's been a concern every so often when we've seen consultations come to committees that the response rates have been quite low. And obviously for something like this, we'd hope it could be much higher. So yeah, just what metrics are we using to judge whether it's been a success, and what kind of numbers would you be hoping for in terms of response?
Ben, Elliot, who wants to?
Shall I take this one, and Elliot can perhaps supplement if necessary. So the key thing with consultations of this type, and it's quite a common thing in planning policy, land use planning policy, to be doing consultations on strategies akin to this. The key thing is how representative they are in terms of have all the representation groups, so community councils, key sort of economy and industry bodies, so representing the tourism sector, representing the business sector more generally, and so the new business partnership will be a key part of this. Have they all responded, basically? And if we were coming towards the end of that 8-week period and there were certain sectors that they hadn't heard anything from, no sort of email saying we intend to submit, or is it okay if we, we're submitting on the day? If we haven't heard, we would want to find out. The kind of numbers you'd expect for a response to this, in terms of just total number of responses, is usually the low hundreds, and that's the case. That's been the case in my experience for most kind of strategies. But the key thing is that the representative groups are aware of and respond, and having had a look at sort of typical response rates to Perth and Kinross Council consultations on the consultation hub, the only time that they get into 4 digits in terms of total numbers, it's when it's budget consultation, and particularly on the housing tenants consultation. That's where you get large volumes of response, because there's a large volume of individuals who are absolutely directly affected by the questions in hand. Has that answered your question, Councillor?
I suppose broadly, does that mean then if we get to the end of it and we don't feel like we've had adequate response, will we extend it or go again? As long as that's on the table, I'm more comfortable.
The other thing in my experience about public engagement like this is most of the responses come in the last 48 hours. So it's difficult to know in terms of the total volume. There's not a minimum volume of response that we consider to be but below which is unsatisfactory. I think it's if there's, as I said earlier, if there's key groups, if we've not had very many community councils responding, that would be a concern. If we've not had responses from the key, we'll be hoping for responses from some of the major employers in the area. That affects them and their workforces and their operations. We will be specifically contacting the newly formed business partnership to sort of look at how we can engage through their members. So it's things like that we'd be looking for to make sure by the time we get to the end. Extending an engagement period is always an option. It's not a statutorily set thing, so nobody's really disadvantaged if they've responded within the time and then it gets extended and others get an extra couple of weeks. So it is something that can be done, but then that can have a knock-on effect as to what the timescale for finalisation of the strategy and action plan is, which committee it can then come back to for final approval, and then how soon it can start getting used to inform things like budget preparation and also funding bids to the likes of Transport Scotland and others. So there's always that. That's why it's an 8-week period, not a longer period at this time.
Thank you, Ben. Just to add to that we as elected members can play a big role in this as well, in ensuring that we do get good engagement, because it is exceptionally important, as you pointed out. And certainly in Kinross recently, we've done a public engagement on active travel, and there's been a good response to it, and that was because the elected members and other groups in the area got involved to try and ensure that there was a good response from it. So we certainly have our role within that at community councils, at other meetings we're at, to encourage people to participate within the consultation. Thanks for the question. I'll leave your next question till after Noah. Dave, your first question.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I just want to say that, first of all, that I thought it was a great report. It was nice and clear and easy to read, and I would commend the people who wrote it. However, and there's always a however, it's the question of the acronyms. Can I suggest that perhaps we think about not putting acronyms in? I know there's a wee key at the top which tells us what they mean. But when you're dyslexic like me, you get halfway down, you think, what's a TPO? Is that a travel plan organizer? I don't know. And I have to keep going back. So can we perhaps move away from using acronyms in reports? Thank you.
It was mentioned at pre-agenda, and Elliot did go away and do a chart with what all the acronyms were to try and help. But thank you, Dave. I'll come back to your other questions, Dave. Angus?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. 4.3 on page 8 of our pack tells us we're aligning with Scottish Government targets. Given that the Scottish Government have just abandoned one of their targets, are we still aligning with them, or are we pushing on?
Ben, can you answer?
I think Elliot or Neil might have a supplement to this, but the key thing is National Transport Strategy 2, and that's where that's the sort of, well, there's legislation above that, but that's the kind of overarching national level policy statement. And so that if and when that changes as a result of change in administration at Scottish Government level, then we would look and review, and one of the more agile things about a local transport strategy is it's not statutory. So unlike a local development plan, where the process to review or change by law has got quite a few stages, and it can be done, but it's quite a commitment in terms of time. A local transport strategy could be adjusted quite rapidly if National Transport Strategy 2 changes. But there may be additional comments from Elliot or Neil.
Yes, thanks, Ben. Is that working all good? Yeah, just very briefly to add, I think despite the kind of unforeseen news of the Scottish Government abandoning their 2030 climate targets, as far as we're concerned as an organisation, we've still got our dedicated climate change and action plan, which remains committed across the council. So, targets that have been established across all our policies should continue to be upheld, and this is something that we'll echo in the strategy and stick with.
Thank you. And Andrew, I don't know if you want to add a wee comment to that last one, Andrew, on some of the news that's come out as well, but your question as well.
No, I'll make that in comments, but my question really goes back to the consultation that Councillor Kigali was referring to, and I just wanted to ask whether at this time any meat can be put on the bones of exactly what tools will be used for the consultation exercise. Thanks.
Elliot?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Parrott. So essentially, the upcoming consultation will be facilitated through the council's consultation hub. So we used that previously for the main issues report and for other engagement initiatives, which was successful overall. So that'll be the kind of the main platform that will facilitate this consultation. It also means it's quite resource kind of light in terms of actually taking the information and digesting it and presenting it. It does a lot of that work for us, so the consultation hub is definitely the way forward. We are going to support a lot of that work through our own targeted promotional events. So we're going to have promotional events across Perthwick and Ross, 6 in total, with a few exception events with the likes of business communities and young adults. So overall, everything will be filtered through the consultation hub. However, we're going to support that work with some in-person promotion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And Noah, can we have your second question?
Yeah, it's less of a question and more an appeal for assistance. But as I think I've raised with some officers already, the community in St Fillan's are inquiring about PKC assistance in setting up a call a bus scheme essentially, and it's just to appeal for anybody that can help with that. I'll get in touch with you afterwards, or please drop me a line, because it's something that community really would like, and that they're pushing for at the moment.
Thank you. Richard, do you want to come in with that question?
Great. Just a quick question for clarification, please, on the way that the strategy has been developed. I didn't see any clear reference to any correlation with the provisions for NPF 4 in here about spatial planning, and how that is going to affect future transport needs within the region.
Thank you, Richard. Ben, is that one for you?
Again, possibly a two-parter. So there is a diagram on page 4 of the strategy document, which I think is page 23 of the agenda pack, which sets out across a number of topics the sort of national and then local level, the correspondence of things like National Planning Framework 4. So for us, the forthcoming Local Development Plan 3 will be the thing which implements NPF 4. But that's deliberately set alongside and should be aligned with things like our local, well, regional and local level economic development planning, local housing strategy, which we already have. That was approved last year by the relevant committee. That corresponds to Housing to 2040. And then there's National Transport Strategy 2, and then the local transport strategy will correspond to that. That omits reference to the TACTRAN regional transport strategy, which is, I believe, now approved. But it's a sort of simplified, that's how we're trying to look at the world, that diagram on page, it's figure 2 of the strategy document, page 23 of the combined pack. My view is that National Planning Framework 4 and National Transport Strategy 2 are actually really quite aligned, possibly the most aligned, that planning and transport policy have been at national level for a good number of years. And that creates an opportunity and a onus on us at local level and us as officers to get planning strategy and transport strategy aligned. There'll be a report on Local Development Plan 3 and the first statutory stage of that, the evidence report, later this year. Aim to take that to full council, has to go to full council, and we're aiming to take that in September this year. So that will be the first key step. What that means is this mobility strategy will be in place, finalised, able to inform how Perth and Kinross prepares its Local Development Plan 3 in the context of NPF 4. So there's opportunity, and I think that's the right order to do that. Set out the transport plan objectives, have that set, and how it relates to our economic and our climate change, our inclusion, our poverty, and other objectives. Have that able to inform the spatial strategy for the Local Development Plan 3. So, for example, where we're putting allocation for new housing, where we're putting identifying land for business and industry development, we're doing so with a view to transport planning objectives, as well as other objectives like, you know, landscape and so on. So I hope that answers the question. And if there's anything supplemental that Elliot or Neil would like to add to that from a transport professional perspective, I don't know.
I think Elliot wants to come in briefly there as well. Elliot?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just very briefly, there's a few aspects and elements of the policy document which kind of shown that alignment between transport policy and planning policy. So just a few points to be made is of course we've got the shared vision. So again, that's on page 23, which is having a shared place-based vision across all planning policies, which is something we look to adopt and take on into our Local Development Plan 3. We've also mentioned in our action plan a number of times the 20-minute approach, which is of course a big aspect of the NPF 4. And then other things like TPO 6, which is all about sustainable development and the right development, is something that we've really pushed, and it's quite a key aspect of the policy document. So I think there is definitely things echoed in the policy document which aligns very much with NPF 4. Thank you.
Thank you. That okay, Richard? Yeah.
There's maybe a need to articulate that within the document. There's an understanding perhaps within the developers of the document.
Thank you. Thank you. Dave, your second question.
Yes, thank you, Convener. You've already mentioned the fact that the Kinrossha Local Committee commissioned an active travel master plan for Kinrossha. I'm just wondering how that's going to be integrated into this this plan here. Perhaps we could have some detail on that.
Elliot or Ben with that one?
Yeah, no, I think it's a piece of work, of course, Councillor, that I've been working on directly when working with our consultants on developing the Kinrossha Active Travel Master Plan. So I'm just scrolling away to get the exact action, so bear with me, but there's a few actions on active travel. One in particular is something that's been pushed by the likes of Transport Scotland, is having our own local active travel strategy for Perth and Kinross. And it's something that a lot of the groundwork's actually been done, and it's kind of just putting all that together into kind of a tangible document. So that's a key bit of work that I think will be taken forward hopefully in relatively quickly. And I think the great aspect of the Kinrossshire is it's kind of leading in terms of setting out the blueprint, I suppose, and how we can do this local level kind of granular approach, looking at an active travel strategy for a ward specific area, I suppose, in Perth and Kinross. So I'm really excited that can actually be a big aspect of informing the active travel strategy for Perth and Kinross, and kind of giving us that blueprint.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Angus, your second question.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'm on page 10 of the strategy. It's page 29 of our document pack, and it tells us that Perth and Kinross's population has a car kilometre average of 12,547 kilometres per person per year, which is almost double Scotland's national average. Quite often, Convener, we get shown these kind of statistics, but then we're grouped in with what you'd call similar authorities or partner authorities. Because if you were to compare us to Edinburgh or Glasgow, then clearly being a rural authority, we will be much worse. So how would we compare to another rural authority?
Elliot?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So in the Let's Talk Transport main issues report, which is kind of, I suppose, the data dump of all the different data sources and aspects that we've used as evidence to inform this report, we had a bit more detail looking at other similar local authorities. So, for example, Stirling Council has quite a similar car kilometre average. I'm just trying to find it just now as I'm scrolling through, because although that is one fairly rural, they also had the same issue, I suppose, on hand, where they have the trunk road network going right through the area. So I think in general, it is comparative to the likes of Stirling and other rural areas, and I think that's something that we could echo a bit more strongly in the document. It is in the Let's Talk Transport report, but overall, I think it does kind of emphasise that issue in rural areas where the car dominance exists.
Yeah, Angus, please.
Thanks for that. You've actually just made me think of something else then. So would I be right in saying if someone sets off from Edinburgh to go to Inverness and they drive up the A9, they are included in our figures, even though they're simply starting out with the authority and finishing out with the authority?
Yeah, so the value's taken from the DFT, and it's basically all travelled kilometres within the area, and then it's shared among the population. So yeah, it's a flaw in that number, to be fair, but it's the best we've got, I suppose. But I think the point still stands, where it's to really show that we do have that car dominance issue. I think it still has a weight to that figure, but yes, and that is correct.
Martin.
Thanks. One thing I would note is the document that's missing, which is the strategic environmental assessment, which is in preparation. This means that carbon emissions from transport is the elephant in the room for Perth and Kinross. And in looking at this draft, we don't know yet how effective you think it will be until that assessment is published. And I do wonder, was there an iterative process here, that you were getting some information from the assessment and then changing your policies to try and improve the results, or was it just here's the draft, let's look at what it does and then go to consultation?
Ben, do you want to come in with that one?
Yes. Well, the preparation of the draft before you, there's been iteration in terms of the strategic action plan. We've had support from consultants, Arup and that, and Elliot may want to add a bit more about that in terms of shaping up strategic objectives. And the consultation, both the statutory consultation on the SEA environmental report, which will take place in parallel with the consultation on the mobility strategy and action plan, and then how the strategy and action plan are finalised, that will be an iteration of the type you described, and that's what's required when you're doing a statutory SEA, strategic environmental assessment. But I think the type of modelling, climate emission, greenhouse gas emission modelling from sources, and looking at how the package of strategic and supporting actions here, how those will influence or could influence emissions, that's not something that is a part of this project, and it's that there's issues with that, because if you look at the actions, for some of them, working out how it will shift behaviour or technology or operations to then allow a recalculated greenhouse gas emission to be done, the information's simply not there. I don't know if that was what the kind of thing you had in mind was, but just in terms of the scope of this, it doesn't include greenhouse gas modelling. Elliot may have a supplementary to add to that, and maybe I've answered your question.
Elliot, do you want to come in?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Ben. I'm happy to add as well. So it has been an iterative process as well. So when we produced the main issues report, we also produced our SEA scoping report, and that essentially highlights a lot of the indicators, a lot of the methodology we'll use to do our full SEA environmental impact assessment. And so that was part of the main issues report consultations. This was last March 2023. That also went to the 3 consultation authorities to the Scottish Government, so that was reviewed by SEPA, and they responded positively to the scoping report. So since then, we've been developing the full SEA in parallel to this piece of work. So when this comes live for public consultation at the end of May, the SEA will be fully developed. It's very close to being finalised, so that'll be available for consultation, and it will also be submitted to the consultation authorities. So it's been working in parallel. We don't want to just kind of do the strategy and then do the SEA at the end. We've actually done it progressively. I suppose one negative of that is it's not with us today, but it's coming very soon.
Right, thanks. I just, thanks very much for that, I got the answer I thought I would get. I just wanted to make it clear. There's an awful lot that we do not know that this strategy will deliver. And that's a question mark for the council.
Yes, as we go forward, without a doubt. Dave, your third question.
Thank you, Convener. It's kind of been answered partially, but on page 49 there are 6 appendices listed, including the Strategic Environmental Assessment Report. I was just wondering if we could have a sort of a timeline for when these will be delivered.
Elliot.
Yeah, so the Strategic Environmental Assessment Report and the Integrated Impact Assessment Report will both be part of the upcoming consultation. So they'll both be finalised in draft form come the end of this month. The other papers are subject to some of the work over the consultation period. So in terms of the likes of Appendix 3, which we're currently developing, which is a consultation summary note, of course, that's kind of seeing what comes out of the next 8 weeks. So in short, some will be at the end of May, and the rest will be the full package will become October.
Thank you. Angus, your third question.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'm on page 11 of the strategy and page 30 of our documents, and it's so this is information that I see has come from Sustrans, so the answer to my question may not be in the room, but we'll try anyway. So it tells us that the benefit from trips cycled in Perth is 7.8 million. I'm wondering, does anyone know how we got to that figure? Because just on the face of it, that seems a huge amount of money. It goes on to say that NHS saving at 430,000, I completely buy that figure, that seems quite sensible, but 7.8 million just seems astronomically high.
Elliot or Ben? Elliot with that one.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Unfortunately, I've not really got the science or the formula behind where those figures have exactly come from, but the evidence is coming from Sustrans' recent Cycling and Walking Index 2023. So that quantifies the benefits from walking and cycling through a number of means. But I'll be honest, I think it's Sustrans' secret sauce, which I'm not aware of in terms of how they get those figures. But we can delve into that further and find out. In terms of its kind of importance in this report, I suppose it's really there to kind of echo and strengthen that evidence that there is benefits, evidence to show there is benefits for our health for walking and cycling. So I think the point certainly still stands, but I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly where the figure taken from.
Brilliant. Ben, do you have anything to add to that, or are you?
I think I've just reached for my copy of the latest Sustrans Walking Cycling Index. There are footnote references in there. Councillor, could we take that question away and circulate whatever answer we get? And usually with the health, we consider the cost of healthcare, especially not primary healthcare, but sort of over when people's conditions develop more seriously, the costs are eye-catchingly high. And the point about sort of facilitating active, healthy lifestyles throughout at any point in people's lives is that's the kind of preventative measures and enabling measures that can actually have a very good cost-benefit ratio. And usually when it comes, in my experience, with things to do with public health, there usually is a chain of evidence there because they're coming from that medical background. So if we could take away that question and see what we can circulate. We also say we have had a conversation with the Director of Public Health for NHS Tayside, Dr. Emma Fletcher, about how planning, mobility and transport relates to public health objectives, and things like the ageing population and the level of unhealthy weights in Tayside area, and how we can help address those. So if it's okay, we'll take away that and see what the evidence base for that information is.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Just for clarity, I'm grateful for you doing that, but what I was referring to, the figure that to me just doesn't seem to make sense, is the one which says the annual economic benefit, which is just before the NHS one. I completely get the NHS one. In fact, I would maybe even argue, although I have no basis on what to base this on, it just seems quite a low figure, but equally the 7.8 million in economic benefit just seems incredibly high. So that was the figure I was querying, not the NHS one. Thanks.
We'll check the provenance of that.
Thank you. Dave, your fourth question.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, save the best one till last. The question really is, who's going to deliver all this? I've been, along with other councillors in Kinross, have been trying to get a cycle lockups for the Kinross Park and Ride for years, and the point is that they're not being delivered because of resource restrictions. So we've got a huge list of ideas here, including things like cycle lockups, but who's going to deliver all this, and how are they going to deliver it?
Elliot, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think it's a very important question, Councillor, and in short, the answer is, I suppose, all of us. I see as all of us contributing to deliver the action plan and the 44 strategic actions. Fundamentally, the strategy is kind of our catalyst to kind of initiate and coordinate delivery over the next 15 years, and it supports us in terms of external funding opportunities, initial environmental and equality considerations. So I really see this as putting us in a much better and stronger position to accelerate delivery. However, there's not one kind of standalone team or aspect of the council that's going to deliver this, as well as our partners. So there's definitely a next step, I suppose, to add a bit more context for your question. So after kind of adopting the strategy, and once we're happy with the kind of bank of actions, I suppose, and the way we want to take this forward, we'll then look at the delivery aspect in terms of what teams are taking on what actions within their resource. And then to go one step further, we're going to look at a robust monitoring and evaluation plan, which will allow us to regularly at intervals check that if we are delivering on scale at the right pace, do we have the right resource? All these questions will be answered over time, which is all part of the process. So yeah, the delivery is definitely probably the hardest aspect. I think maybe this is the easy bit, I suppose, getting the strategy over the line and actually delivering it, but I think we've got a lot of steps which will lead us in the right direction.
Thank you, Elliot. Angus?
I also had left my best question for last, but Dave got there first, so I was going to ask exactly the same thing as him. But I have a slightly different question, and I appreciate both Ben and Elliot. I'm really pushing my luck in asking you this, and if you just don't want to answer it, it's absolutely fine. But just what's your instinct on this? In 10 years' time, will the transport of Perth and Kinross look largely the same as it does today, or will it look remarkably different? And again, I'm not pushing you. If you don't want to answer, that's totally fine.
I'm happy to offer a part of an answer. Well, in 10 years' time, Perth and Kinross will physically look different because the growth, the physical growth coming through the current local development plan, LDP2 adopted in 2019, will continue to proceed. So the growth of Perth City to the north and to the west will you'll be able to see that continuing to rise from the ground, and so be on track to become a bigger city. So that alone, I think I'm safe in answering that. Even with slowdowns in house building and so on, that sort of waxes and wanes. But once the land's allocated, the growth does happen, in my experience. And so as a result of that, how people move around will change. But with the direction this strategy is setting out, the aim is to make that a sort of sustainable and inclusive and as healthy as it can be within Perth City scale. Across wider Perth and Kinross, likewise, there's a lot of growth in the pipeline already committed. So how the other sizable settlements adapt and change and evolve and grow in response to that. It could go either way. It could just be people have the same sort of opportunities for how they move around as perhaps their current patterns are. But that would be a missed opportunity to make it easier, say, if you are moving into a new build home in Aughterard or Crieff or Blairgowrie, to be able to quickly walk around the corner to get some of the things you need in terms of local shopping, for example, or to actually be working in a business unit in a small bit of employment development that's happened as part of those plan-led expansions. So I think change is happening anyway, but with the strategy, this strategy and this action plan, it can be steered to give more people more travel options and make it more sustainable, inclusive, and contribute to thriving settlements. That's what I would want to say on that. But I suppose apart from say, in terms of how that's to be realised, it really will rely upon a whole range of on everybody. So both council directing and sourcing funding for capital investment and infrastructure, working with partners on things like looking at alternative models for public transport, but also for the businesses and residents of Perth and Kinross and how many of whom I think want to change, but they need help in doing that. And so that's the council as enabler rather than direct doer. That's my thoughts on this.
Thank you. Angus, do you have another question? No, that's it. I'd lost count. You kind of said one more and then you said last one after this one. So I was a wee bit confused with that one. Do we have Martin, you have a further question?
Yeah, it's an observation as much as a question.
Can we, Martin, just
okay, I'll leave that till then.
Well, yeah, we'll come on to a comment section and then you can come in on the comment section.
Right, I'll do that.
Thank you, Martin. Grant, you have a question?
Hi, thanks. And it's following on from Councillor Forrest from Angus's question, which is a good question. And if we look retrospectively over the way people travelled and went to work and that from 10 years ago, we wouldn't have imagined the changes that we've seen because of home working, etc. And that, so that has been a massive shift that was unforeseen. So I think you gave a fair stab at it, Ben, but there's always going to be things coming that don't. You just have to look. There will be different ways, even of getting into work and getting to Perth when Destiny Bridge opens, because that's going to change the traffic flow straight away. So I think there will be change in the way that we move around. But technology and everything, we can only do so much and give people the tools to, by trying to, as we've invested in looking at different ways of public transport. And then I'm sure that there's plans for the railway station, etc. in Perth and that coming forward, hopefully in the next 10 years as well. So I think this is a good document. I enjoyed reading it and that. But the question is, Ben, because I'm now going into comments, so I apologise, is if you look at the last 10 years and the 10 years before that, the 10 years before that, there's always been a change on how people move around. Surely that's self-evident, is it not?
I think so, and the now the data. So a really important thing in this is using data and evidence, and that's what Elliot and the people working this have sought to do. And as the data is now emerging post the sort of disruption of the early 2020s, those patterns are becoming clearer. But hybrid working has changed things a lot, and where people go for their shopping and their leisure spend, that's shifting a bit as well. We know that, and what the threat that presents to the city centre, but also opportunities it presents for other centres. I think the pace of change is potentially going to be faster in the next over the next 10 to 15 years than it was even in the fast pace we've seen in the first 20 years of this century. And so the need to be agile and respond to that, also have a sense of direction that we've had to have over the last 4 years. We need to keep that skill at being able to manage change. I think local authorities are in a good position to do that because we cover across a wide range of activities. And earlier this week, Elliot and myself were discussing this with colleagues across with different strategic leads management teams, including the Health and Social Care Partnerships strategic planning group, to look at what's going on for them and how they deliver services, and how does that relate to how people get to their clients, how they access services, how does it relate to things like rural housing affordability, and the cost of moving from where you live to where you're accessing or providing a service. So this is, to answer your question, yes, the pace of change and the unpredictability of it will carry on, and you can still have a strategy for that, but you need flexibility as well, and that's why this is structured around the strategy bit and then the action plan bit. And that strategy bit hopefully won't need to get changed too much too soon. It might last for 5-10 years before it gets reviewed. The action plan will be a quite fluid working section of this, which will be getting updated and used almost continually. So we can take advantage of the opportunities and meet and address the risks and threats as they arise.
Thank you, Ben. I don't see any further questions. I'll give it a wee second. This report presents members with an overview of the consultation draft mobility strategy and its accompanying action plan for Perth and Kinross Council. This provides a pivotal step in shaping the future of transportation and mobility in our area. This consultation draft offers a comprehensive proposal to guide the management and development of our transport network over the next 15 years. In moving this paper, the consultation draft will be made publicly available via the Council's consultation hub, raising awareness and inviting valuable input from our communities, businesses and stakeholders. The information gathered will play a crucial role in refining and finalising the draft strategy. I am happy to accept the recommendation within the report and move the paper for approval. Can I ask Councillor Liz Barrett to second?
Thank you, Convener. I welcome this progress towards an integrated strategy laid out in the report, and I'd like to thank Elliot and Ben and Neil and the teams for the huge amount of work that lies behind this. I'm very happy to second the report, and I'd ask everyone here to please promote and encourage participation in the consultation that will be starting later this month. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any comments on the report? And I'm going to let Martin, I'll let you come in first, and then I'll go to Deputy Provost Andrew Parrott.
Thank you. Just to, I think I'm stating the obvious after the discussion that was held earlier. This is a good initiative, but its outcomes are unpredictable due to other forces, some of which are in control of the council and some of which are not. Strategic planning is absolutely key here. As an example, where I live, every new house that's built is effectively an extra car journey into Perth at least approximately once a week, because people have to come down to Perth to do their week shopping because the local shops are poor, irregular, and expensive. So strategic planning is a key part of this. The second thing I would say is that the external forces, and it's been mentioned here, the building of the bridge not just will change travel patterns, it will increase the use of the car. The dualling of the A9, any dualling of the A9 increases traffic volumes on the A9. So we must be aware of the limits of the power of Perth and Kinross Council on this, but also the need to integrate transport planning with all other aspects of infrastructure planning and development planning if we are to achieve meaningful results.
Thank you, Martin. Andrew?
Thank you very much. First of all, it's been alluded to earlier, but as convener of TACTRAN, I can confirm that yesterday afternoon I received a letter from Fiona Hislop, the Transport Minister, to say that the TACTRAN Regional Transport Strategy has been approved. So I regard that as a major step forward for transport strategy in the TACTRAN region and by extension here. Can I say as I'm delighted for the first time that Perth and Kinross Council is moving towards the adoption of a mobility oblique transport strategy. Transport is the vital enabler for all that community and society physically does, and transport is a huge contributor to carbon emissions, which are very important in the context we live in now. I believe that all too often in the UK, we have adopted a more or less laissez-faire attitude with respect to transport, in contrast to some places. And the mobility strategy locally is a sign of change times and a better understanding of the importance of transport issues. For the first time, I believe that with this strategy, we will be proactively seeking to shape the change that has been referred to earlier. I look forward to the consultation as the next stage of this process. And I just want to address the point that Councillor Forbes made with regard to transit traffic. Transit traffic is more of a fundamental issue in Perth and Kinross than it is, I think, in any other local authority area in Scotland. We have both the strategic, if you like, Edinburgh to Inverness corridor and the Glasgow to the Aberdeen corridor crossing at Broxden. Outside of Perth and Kinross, you only have the route north over the Tay Bridge and the route north through Crianlarich and the coast road south of Fort William, and so transit traffic is of vital importance here, and I'm trying very hard through TACTRAN to have the impact of that transit traffic on the TACTRAN area recognised more fundamentally as a component of the problems we face in Perth and Kinross and in the TACTRAN area, and recognised in the context of helping us, reach the solutions, because there is only so much that we can do within Perth and Kinross and within the TACTRAN area to address transit traffic. That has to be part of the wider conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. David?
Thank you, Convener. I've read the papers. There are lots and lots of actions in there. I'm just skeptical that it will have a significant impact in 10, 20 years' time. And when I look in where I live in Abernethy, there's still one bus service at number 36, and almost everybody has a car, and we are a suburb of Perth, and all our journeys more or less are in and out of Perth. I'm just skeptical that this strategy will have an enormous impact on transport.
Thank you, David. I think that's up to us to try and ensure we do give positive choices for people in the way that they travel in the future. Grant? Oh no, sorry, Grant. Dave.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, as I've said already, I think this is an excellent report, and I think the aspirations in it are fantastic. I think as a direction of travel, great, wonderful. I'm just concerned that we're maybe over promising and therefore destined to underperform. And I just think we need to think carefully about resources and make sure we've got the resources in place to deliver as much of this as we possibly can.
Thank you, Dave. Grant.
I'd like to first thank Ben and Elliot for the report that's come here today and in the way they answered the questions. They both are, like most of our officers, very well over their brief, and for Elliot, first time met him in the chamber, performed extremely well, so thanks to him. I sometimes get kind of wonder why some people, you know, are on a committee where they have no faith in anything we do and say nothing will ever change. It's up to every one of us. If we don't have a strategy or a way to move forward, we will definitely end up just being where we are. The idea of putting a strategy is to try and change things, is to give a roadmap to changing things and to do it. That is the point of us being here. That is the point of this committee, to try and do something. Not to say we're too small, we can't do anything and just forget about it. Everybody does that and we'll still be doing what we're doing in 40, 50 years' time. This is a committee. Maybe it only makes a small difference in the area, but it's at least showing the way and it's made it. And that's why I think committee is very important. And I'll not sit about and just say, oh, well, it'll not change anything and go back to that, because that is not the way of driving anything forward. And to throw your hands up there and come to the committee and say that, I find really, really strange. Thanks.
Thank you, Grant, and certainly I think within our group we will keep doing as much as we can to deliver this and other commitments to climate change and sustainability throughout Perth and Kinross. Angus.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I find myself actually agreeing with Grant today. This is a remarkable start to the day. I don't know how the rest of the day is going to play out for this, but specifically on the comments he made about Ben and Elliot, and very pleased to see that both of them know this stuff inside out. I do share some of Councillor Illingworth's scepticism. We've all been here. Many of us been here for a good number of years, and I think for a while we've been talking about some integration between the railway station and the bus station, and that hasn't moved on. I think having a strategy to do anything, as Councillor Ling says, is the right thing to do. I don't see anything in the way of funding how all this is going to happen, and I think that's perhaps the issue that Councillor Illingworth was alluding to. So I share your enthusiasm for this. I really hope that we will make some of the differences that are outlined in this report. We're going to need some money to do so. I think the will is here. We've got the knowledge and the experience. We don't at this stage have the money. And maybe if all of us are still here in 10 years' time, we can go back to my very last question that Ben at least had a very good shot at answering. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Angus. Is there any amendments? No. Can we agree the recommendations in the report? Thank you, Ben Elliott. I think great to see this come forward, and have had many meetings with you over quite a while on various things, and it is great to have that confidence and the forward thinking that we need as a council in relation to transport. And obviously Neil as well, I know, inputs quite a lot into it as well, sitting quietly, but the real brains, eh? Right, thank you very much, everyone. That brings us the end of the meeting, and I would like to wish everybody a good afternoon. Thank you.